right? I don't see anything. When we think of charity a lot, we think about giving alms or donating money, which, don't get me wrong, that's charitable. But it's defined as these three things: benevolence, kindness towards everyone. Everyone's a broad word, yeah? That means everyone. The guy that broke your heart, the dictator that invaded your country, the guy that cut you off on I-4 this morning, everybody. Indulgence of others, right? What does that mean, indulgence? We'll talk more about that, but think about that, indulgence of others. And then obviously forgiveness of offenses comes to mind right away when we talked about the title of this book or this talk tonight. What else do they tell us in that question? The supplemental answer, or the continuation or the discussion in that question talks about love and charity being a supplement to the law of justice. So law of justice says, life is fair, cause and effect. What we do is what we reap, right? We reap what we sow. So part of that law of justice is the love we have for others and the charity that we show to others. This next sentence is profound. Loving our neighbors is to do them all the good possible, right? When you think about evaluating yourself or how are you doing, a lot of times we talk about the good that we do or the bad that we don't do, right? When we think of offenses, well, I'm not going to do this, right? Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not, all these different things that we're not supposed to do. It's rare, though, that you see it written like this. Love our neighbors is doing all the good possible. So what else didn't you do today that you could have done that was good for others? Did you do everything possible that was good? Right? Did I let that guy get in front of me, right, on I-4, on the turnpike, instead of speeding up so he couldn't cut me off? Right? Stuff like that. All the good possible. All that we would wish to be done to ourselves. Right? Love one another as brothers. So I like that. All the good possible that we can do. Imagine if we spent our time thinking of all the good we could do for others and then trying to deliver on that. That question goes on to say that charity, according to Jesus, is not restricted to almsgiving, right? Donating money. It embraces all relations with our fellow humans, right? Charity orders us to be indulgent. So let's think about indulgence. When I think of indulgence, I think, as I've been trying to eat healthy, trying to get in shape. So when I think of indulgence, I think, well, I can eat that piece of cake. I've been good all week. I'll indulge myself. But indulgent in this term talks about, think about the most annoying person that you know. Somebody just rubs you the wrong way. Don't look at your husband. That's not nice. Come on. I would have expected that from him. Come on. Right? But think about that person that just rubs you the wrong way. It tells us we got to be indulgent of them. The person that just annoys us, right? That just doesn't seem like they're oil, we're vinegar, right? Or no, not oil and vinegar. Oil and water. Whew, I got to work. It's much easier in Portuguese for me. I'm sorry. No, I'm kidding. I don't. The point is, indulgent of those things that just rub us the wrong way. It forbids us to humiliate the unfortunate. That makes sense, right? People that have a harder lot than us, a more difficult situation. Let's not make fun of them, right? Let's not humiliate them. Let's not put them down. Those who are truly charitable seek to uplift the self-esteem of those in lower positions. So people with issues, people that might be humiliated by others, people that might not experience indulgence from the masses. It's our job to lift them up, right? When other people are not indulgent towards them, when other people are not trying to help them, come to their rescue, right? Don't call attention to their issue. Lift them up. Make them uplifted. Get them going, right? Which ultimately reduces the distance between us and them. Picks them up, brings us down, however you want to look at it. Makes us more equal, which truly we are, right? No one's better than anybody else. So this looks familiar, right? Who was Jesus talking to? Was it Isaiah? I forget. My Bible study is not that good. But there's a passage somewhere in Isaiah, I think, that talks about Christ is asked, how many times should I forgive someone that offends me? And somebody volunteers, 7 times, Father? And Christ is reported to answer, no, 77 times. Right? Not just for everything they ever did, but for everything they do, each offense, forgive them 77 times. You should forgive every offense as many times as it's committed against you. In other words, no matter what, right? Forgive. Every time, all the time. No matter who, no matter what, we should forget it. For they tell us that forgetfulness of self, in other words, not my feelings, but what other people do to me, right? Forgetfulness of that, right? Makes us invulnerable, right? If we're going to forgive everybody for everything, completely, we're invulnerable to attack. You can't hurt me. I can't hurt you. I've already forgiven you, right? In theory. I mean, it's easier said than done, yeah? Christ showed us that, did he not? As he's being crucified, he prayed for his executors, or his executioners, yeah? 77 times. And if you do these things, you're invulnerable to attack. Evil behavior can have no effect on you, nor can insult. Right? How many of us still remember everybody that ever insulted us or hurt us? Hold on to it. It happens. Right? I know people that haven't talked to family members for decades because of something. You ask them, what happened anyway? So I don't remember, but I'm never talking to him again. Right? Stuff like that. So that's huge. But it makes so much sense. If we can get to that level, if we can do that, we become invulnerable. I tell my kids all the time, I have 3 young daughters, and they're angels most of the time. But sometimes they hate each other. They're just fighting, right? And, Gabriella says, well, Juliana said this. Cecilia says, but Gabby said that. And, it goes back. I said, but girls, they said, right? Words can't hurt you unless you let them penetrate. So it's easy for me to tell 10 and 11-year-olds that, but sometimes it's hard for the 52-year-old to practice what he preaches, yeah? They go on to tell us that you shall be meek and humble, right? Don't measure your own kindness, right? It's easy for us to say, well, I do this, and I gave to the Girl Scouts, right? I bought $20 of cookies this year, right? Right? I opened the door for Mrs. Smith, and I let that guy in on the highway, and I went to Caravan once last month, stuff like that. But don't measure your kindness. It shouldn't be about how much good you do in keeping score. You shall do for others what you would want your Heavenly Father to do for you, right? Obviously, we want forgiveness when we mess up, when we make mistakes. We want to be indulged for our idiosyncrasies, for our mistakes. We want others to be charitable towards us, right, when we find ourselves in need. In fact, they go even further, and they instruct us, be generous, even lavish, right, with your love. Lavish is a strong word, right? Lavish is just overboard, right? Go to the extreme with your love. Love everyone as much as you can. Then they instruct us to forget the evil that's been done to you. And if you think about it, don't spend too much time on it, but think about something negative that was done to you. How many times did it happen? We've talked about this before, yeah? One time, probably, right? A year ago? 5 years ago? 20 years ago? Every time you think about it, it's happening again, yeah? Only happened once. But every time you think about it, you're reliving it. There's tons of scientific evidence, with MRI studies that show that just thinking about a bad act or just thinking about a bad experience lights up areas of your brain just as if it was happening to you in real time. So just the thought of it, just holding on to it, hurts you. Think of only one thing we're told, regardless of evil that may have happened to you. The good that you can do to others, for others. Empty your thoughts of any sentiment of rancor, resentment, revenge, disadvantaged or offended. Put that out of your mind as much as possible because you're just reliving it the more you hang on to it. Simply think of the good that you can do. I can think of experiences over my lifetime where bad things happen to bad people, yeah? And early in my life, I celebrated, Yeah, they deserved it. Later in life, I find myself praying for bad people when bad things happen to them. Or just in business, I have competitors, yeah? And I used to be happy when bad things happened to them. Not anymore. I'm actually at a place where I hope good things happen to everyone. Um, so that really hit home for me. I think as we progress, as we evolve, if we can get to that state when we're happy or wish nothing but good for others, regardless of things they may have done to us, we're starting to turn the corner. I still have a hard time on the turnpike, though. That's my one issue. I drive a lot, so it's hard to be happy about those trucks that drop rocks and crack my window. Yeah. But then I was following too close, right? I should have been farther back. That's how I try to look at it. That makes sense so far? Awesome. There's a test at the end. You have the quizzes, Alex? Yeah? Okay, good. Awesome. Awesome. So when we talk about forgiveness, the gospel talks about two manners of forgiveness, and this will make sense to all of us, I think. There's forgiveness from the lips and forgiveness from the heart. Are they the same? No way, right? Which one's easier? From the lips, yeah? I can talk a lot. It's easy to talk, right? But the heart's a different story. From the lips, they tell us, look, it's easy. Hey, I forgive you. I've done that plenty of times, but carry resentment in my heart. Very easy to just tell somebody, hey, don't worry about it. I accept your apology. I forgive you. And then you move on because you just get past the conflict, if you will. You create a situation that everybody can live with. You keep the peace. I had a meeting today, actually, with a woman, a researcher, and she probably doesn't even remember this, right? Maybe she does. I don't know. But it's 5-6 years ago. I was asked to get involved, and I had this great idea, and she shot down the idea. And I carried that. It was funny. I can remember seeing her this is 6 years ago. Then 3 years ago, I remember running into her. And I can remember her, we're making eye contact, and she turned quickly, like she didn't want to deal with it, right? And at that time, I was already over. And today, now there's a new project, and now she needs my help, right? I'm so excited about this project. And we got past it. You could tell that there were some issues on her part, but I had total peace in my heart for her. I had to let go of all that. And you could tell that she was bridging that gap as well. Maybe because she needs something from me now. I don't care. I'm glad that we have a chance to work together. So little things like that. We can hold on to the pain that maybe we felt that others caused forever, or we can let it go and move on. But from the lips is definitely easier. From the heart, right, this inward feeling of true forgiveness, right, is harder, right? Because a lot of us, it's easy to feel pleasure when bad things happen to our enemies, right? They get what they deserved. I'll forgive them, right? But I'll never reconcile, right? My father and his mother had a fight about 8 years before she died, and they didn't talk, right? He didn't go to the funeral. He hasn't talked to his sister or his brother in all these years. And it's been some time now. I was a much younger man when my grandmother passed away. And if the subject comes up now, you can see the impact on him, you know, when it comes up. You can see the emotional toll that it's taken. And if you ask him about his father, right, who died much earlier, and you ask him, you know, what would you do if you talked to Grandpa one more time? And a big smile comes on his face. So I just tell him I love him. I give him a hug and just talk what he wants to talk about. You can see the joy on his face. If someone's brave enough to ask the same question about his mother, you can see the pain and the anguish. He won't talk about it. He'll change the subject. But you can see the pain and the suffering that whole ordeal create. So the reason I share that story with you is if we're stuck in this resentment, if we're stuck in holding on to the pain that others have caused us, it's not just that one aspect of your life. It carries over in all areas. It bleeds into new relationships. It causes barriers to moving forward in other areas. So just apologizing or just forgiving from the lips does not release your heart or your soul from that anchor of moving on. And that's just one example that I've seen in my life that's painful. True forgiveness, the gospel tells us, is the kind that casts a veil, right? It covers your eyes. You can't see. Right? A veil is like what they put over you before they execute you, right? So you can't see. Or I always wonder why brides wear veils. I don't know. There's got to be a correlation there. But it's the kind that casts a veil over the past. The complete and absolute forgiveness of offenses is proper of great souls. In other words, if we're great, if we're going to evolve, if we're going to become morally elevated, right, which is our mission, right, to grow, to evolve, to follow that light, to live like Christ taught us, right? If we're going to grow, we have to accept and practice this complete and absolute forgiveness of offenses, regardless of the person that committed it, regardless of the pain that it caused us or the world around us. Rancor is always a sign of low-mindedness, of inferiority. Well, that's enough for me. I don't want to be inferior. Right? I'm competitive, right? I don't want to be inferior. So I'm going to raise up. I'm going to accept this. I'm going to do this more often. And the last sentence here, right? True forgiveness is recognized by actions much more than words. And I think that's obvious, right? We can definitely see sincerity and forgiveness by how we act and how we treat others, as opposed to just what we say. Easy enough, right? You're all going to do this tomorrow? Yeah? No problem? Tonight, all right. I'll never forget, man. I used to go to a really big church years ago. I mean, they had police, directing traffic after the service. And we'd all be in there for an hour, hour and a half. And, we had communion. Everybody was shaking hands and hugging. And then, man, if they weren't cutting people off or trying to get out of the parking lot faster than everybody else, they just forgot we forgot everything that we listened to, trying to get on the highway first, So good. We're going to do it tonight, Tim. No cutting each other off tonight. All right, so let's talk about indulgence. And remember, I shared with you indulgence for me is cheating it a little bit, right? Having that piece of cake when I'm not eating sugar anymore, or having that guaraná soda, or if I'm at a Brazilian barbecue, that sugar that I just love, but I know it's bad for me. But in this context, it's not seeing the defects in others, right? It's so easy, right, to see those. We live in a society that judges a lot, right? You can't be on the internet or Facebook or even watch TV without commercials, without judgment, about things, that just point out how I'm better than them or she's better than me or what have you. And you just see these defects in others. And to the point to where we talk about them. And we almost feel better talking about them ourselves sometimes. So what the gospel tells us in this situation is, don't see the defects in others. And I've mentioned this before. When you look, Tim, when you look at a coconut tree, a palm tree, and then a couple trees down, you see an oak tree, right? Because you can do that in Florida. You see palm trees and oak trees in the same field. Do you ever look at one and say, that one's ugly and this one's pretty, or this one's that or that? You ever compare trees? Not typically, right? But if you're at the beach or at the park and there's this person and that person, how often do we judge or compare people, right? Two different trees, two different people, but yet we don't judge trees, but we judge people, right? So what they're telling us here is, don't see the defects, right? See the beauty, see the similarities. But if you do see them, let's say we're not quite there yet, right? We still see defects in others. If you do, avoid talking about them. Don't call it out. Don't point it out. In fact, indulgence, they tell us, hides them so that they're not known. If we see defects, or if others are talking about defects, right, we're going to do our best to protect that person or call attention to something else, right? Somebody sees a defect in someone, and the person that's indulgent snaps really quick. Not snaps, but comments really quick. Oh, but look at that, right? Takes the attention away from the defect, calls out the positive. Trying to think of a good example, but I can't. In other words, though, we shouldn't talk about people's defects, because we all have defects. I don't know about you, but I don't like it when people talk about my defects, few as they might be. I'm kidding. I am defective, for sure. Now, if they become known, right, indulgence has an excuse to mitigate them. Indulgence is never concerned with the wrongs of others, right? We find the positives, we lift other people up, we encourage them, and try to draw attention towards their positives as opposed to focusing on their negatives. Again, I think most of us probably try to do this, but it's easy to get caught up in gossip. I have 3 little girls, and it's very common after school or after soccer practice. You'll see them with a bunch of friends, and it's very easy for one kid to say something, and the other kid jumps in, and before you know it, everybody's kind of calling out one person. So it's important to point that out to them, and you can see how they get it and they stop doing it. So maybe we can all do more of this. Indulgence continues, right? They tell us doesn't make shocking remarks. It doesn't have reproach on its lips. It only counsels. So if we see errors in people and their judgment and their actions, and it comes up, and if we can somehow counsel them, right? It only counsels. It doesn't condemn. It doesn't judge. It's okay to counsel your friends and other people, or ask others to counsel you in a quiet manner, right? You wouldn't talk about their errors or their quirks, if you will. You'd indulge them and help them in a quiet manner. But be stern towards yourself, right? If you know of your inadequacies or your quirks or where you are failing, you should be stern towards yourself. Be your harshest critic. Be your own judge, but indulgent towards others. Don't judge others. Sternness, they remind us, discourages, right? If you're really stern, and you probably experience this with what's a common experience? We all go to a store and we buy something, right? 7-Eleven, someplace in the mall, a restaurant, wherever. Just think about a transaction. You ever walk up to a person at customer service or checkout, and they're just grumpy and they're having a bad day, right? They're stern, right? How does that make you feel? Discourages you, right? You may not go back. You may go to another line. You may just hang your stuff up and not buy it. It can anger you, right? A person that's stern, that is rude, that's rough, can create anger on the other person's part. I like to turn that around, though. My wife laughs at me. I love a challenge, right? But when I encounter sternness from people in those situations, I try to diffuse it simply by asking them, "How's your day going?" with a big smile on my face. It's hard. You ever been in a bad mood and somebody smiles at you? What do you do usually? You smile back. We're almost conditioned for that. Yeah. So I just smile. "Hey, how you doing? How's your day? They treating you okay?" And sure enough, over that transaction, over that 5 seconds, 10 seconds, you can turn their sternness into a smile. I found that there's very, very few instances where I haven't been able to do that. So I would encourage you, as the gospel does, sternness only turns people away. It doesn't create dialogue. It doesn't create relationship. It doesn't create finding solutions. As we can see in politics a lot, right? We don't come together a lot anymore. We fight because everybody's so stern and so stuck. So indulgence, on the other hand, appeals. It's a hand. It reaches out, right? It calms people down. It lifts people up. When you're patient, when you're kind, when you're benevolent, when you're receptive, when you don't let other people's energy infect you and turn you negative, it truly does bring people together and has a calming effect. So next time you're in a difficult situation like that, try to turn on the indulgence. Try to smile and watch how it lifts everything up. So what should we do? The gospel instructs us as we live our life, as we drive our car, as we talk on the phone, as we engage in conversations in email or on Facebook. If we're in a situation where we identify, where we experience a problem, where we're in this conversation and we're cognizant of the fact that it's offensive, it's bothering me, and I'm about to explode or I'm about to react, what should we do when we encounter problems with any kind of offense from somebody else. Or we see ourselves at a disadvantage, right? I'm in the process of negotiating a contract, right? And I feel like I have the disadvantage in this situation. So I'm conscious of that. So I need to make sure that I prepare and that I go into this conversation with this process and try to forget where I am, right? Just remember to have respect, to have love in my heart for this other situation, and overcome, not to take things personally, and to not look at it from who's got the upper hand. Discord, right, is very common in our society today. When we find ourselves reacting to discord, having a problem with it, what do we do? What should we do? How about if we just don't understand something? You ever feel like an idiot sometimes? Like, man, these guys are talking about something, and I'm supposed to understand this, and I don't get it, right? I don't understand, right? Because sometimes nobody means to offend us. They're not trying to get one over on us. They're not trying to be rude to us. They just have an understanding of something from their perspective, and for whatever it is, I just can't get it, you can't get it. So this incomprehension creates this problem, where sometimes when we don't comprehend, we go in this defensive mode. So that would be, all these are examples of experiencing problems with what other people are doing to us. What is the advice they give us in the gospel? What do you think? What's the next slide going to say? Run? No, don't run. Put up your dukes? No. Check this out. Study your own reactions to it. Don't, the heck with other people and what they're doing and what they're saying. First and foremost, study your own reactions to it. Can you feel your blood boiling? Can you feel your skin getting red? Can you feel tense? Right? Study your own reactions to it. Because remember, we're a spirit, right? Eternal spirit, kind of trapped in this mortal body for this lifetime, right? With all of our experiences from this life and previous lives, all putting us right where we are right now. And we're going to respond to situations based on all those experiences, right? So until we can break it down and understand our reaction to it and realize that we can control what other people do to us, right? It only is going to affect us if we let it, right? If we can do that, what we're going to understand, or what we're going to stop, is sorrow, right, from coming in touch with the forces that dwell in our mind. If we can understand that whatever they're doing is infecting us or bothering us, and understand how we are reacting at the moment, or how we're about to react, we can stop it. So when we feel resentment, right, what are we letting happen? Remember that question I asked you, something that bothered you 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 10 years ago? It may have only happened once. But if we carry resentment in our heart and our mind for the offender, all that we're truly doing is cutting the tissues of our own soul. We're reliving that cut every time we think about it, every time we have anger or rancor towards the person that committed it. And it just perpetuates it. So they compare it to accommodating poison or sheltering and nourishing unnecessary suffering. Right? Every time we relive it, every time we don't let it go or stop our reaction to it, it's just like keeping that poison in our body. Right? So get the poison out, I like to say, right? Get it out. Because it will reduce a lot of unnecessary suffering. So one of the ways we can do this, according to that third source, heart and soul, right? One of the ways we can do this effectively is think of offenders, right? Somebody that's doing something wrong to you, whatever it might be, minor, serious, whatever it is. Think about what's creating their action towards you or towards others, right? More than likely, frequently, they're under a regrettable obsessive process, right? They're in some trauma, some situation where it's creating their behavior. You can't fix that. You can't control that. But have compassion towards their situation. Have indulgence for that situation. That could be one of them. The other one is they could be carrying some hidden disease, some trauma that they've experienced that makes them lash out or makes them hurt. They're dealing with their own situation that could be impacting their thoughts and their actions, right? So consider that they could be having a bad day. They could be simply acting under some impulse, some innate reaction to how they've responded to things because of things that happened to them earlier in life. You think they're lashing out at you, they're simply living their own drama and responding automatically to a situation that they were taught how to do that. Maybe they're making just a tremendous mistake. They have no interest in hurting you, but how they see things is just creating this mistake on their part. Or, like we said, right, the incomprehension, right? They're just acting out of ignorance. That's all they've ever known. That's how they're going to act. So if you can put their actions towards you into one of these categories, or just realize that any one of these categories could be the reason they're acting the way that they're acting, it's going to help you be indulgent. It's going to help you realize that it can only impact you if you let it. Make sense? All right. They remind us, though, that forgiveness, love for your enemy, hoping the best for your enemy, none of that excuses the offender, right? They're not off the hook. They don't get a free pass. It's not my job or your job to help correct them, per se. But the offender has to repent, right? Cause and effect, right? All of our actions, ours, others, we're all responsible for them. And whatever they're doing that's offending you, they will have to repent. They will experience the heartbreak. How many of you have made a mistake, and then a day later, a week later, a year later, 10 years later, you realize the error of your ways? I can think of a childhood experience in high school. Great friend of mine for years, right? We had, an altercation of some kind. I can't even tell you what it was. But I said something that was wrong. It was hateful. We're not great friends anymore, right? But I didn't make the connection for some time, right? And it was profound when I made the connection, because even though it was like a decade later, when I finally came to this realization and I saw the error of my ways and didn't blame him anymore and realized it was me, right, that was the offender, it was extreme heartbreak. He wasn't even in my life anymore at this time. I did run into him at some point, and we made up and hugged each other and promised to keep in touch. We don't, right? But we tried to mend the fence. But I experienced the heartbreak of my actions from almost a decade before that. So as we offend, we will repent. We will experience the heartbreak of those offenses. And we will long for invigoration to be forgiven. We will long for invigoration to get better. And that may be a day later. It could be decades later. It may be 2 lifetimes later. We will long to repent. And once we know we've made the mistake, right, or they've made a mistake towards us, the tragedy there is we have to live with the knowledge that we've injured someone or they've injured us, right? And the impact of that on our spirit. Because remember, actions taken in this life or previous lives, they stay with us. They're imprinted on the spirit. And we have to overcome. We have to repent. And there's work to be done to overcome any wrong that we commit. Not just in our actions, but in things we don't do. Remember one of the first slides said, do all the good that you can do. Right? You may not do anything bad. You may not make a mistake towards someone. But did you do everything you could for them? Right? If there's things left undone that you could have done to help someone, we'll be accountable for that. I see patients sometimes, and you do what you do. You prioritize when you're taking care of somebody, and there'll be things that come up that you can fix immediately, and there'll be things that you prioritize. All right, we don't need to do this today or that today, and then you see them months later for a follow-up, and that little thing that didn't seem important, it got to be a bigger thing. And I feel that not every day, but I feel that a lot in my practice. Man, I should have fixed that back then. Luckily, I'm not a surgeon or I don't deal with life and death situations. But that doesn't excuse the fact that I leave things undone that I could have finished today. So I live with that, and I'm sure you can all think of things in your daily work or life that you left undone. So this encourages us, I think, to try to do your best in each moment to do all the good that you can do. Don't leave anything undone if you can fix it today. Man, I sound like a bad guy tonight, don't I? Man, I got to work on this. All right, so for the offended, right, that's us in this situation. Somebody's offended us. Someone's hurt us. What's the danger, all right? The danger in this, we're told, in Heart and Soul, chapter 47, is the danger of allowing resentment to fill us. Somebody did us wrong, and we can choose to hold on to it and carry it with us and hate them and not want to see them, not want to talk to them, talk bad about them to others. So the danger for us is letting resentment fill us, right? And we're taught, we're encouraged, we're told, don't respond to evil with evil, right? Don't seek revenge, don't lash out, don't fight back. You have to protect yourself in the sense of danger, if you know what I mean. But get out of there, protect yourself emotionally, physically, what have you. But don't lash out with anger, don't lash out with evil just because someone hurt you, right? Don't be like that. And we're reminded that offenders are almost always victims of these things we talked about, right? They're hurting you or being offensive to you because of some obsessive process. They're sick or confused individuals. They're just unhappy, right? There's just some unhappy people out there in the world. I saw one of those people today. No matter what I do, the guy's never happy. But I try, yeah? So if you can remind yourself not to respond evil with evil, right? Not to fill yourself with resentment. And consider the source, right? Consider the person offending you. And realize that there's something behind their actions and not take it personally, right? Indulge them, forgive them, and understand that they're coming from a bad place. And that you don't have to let that pollute you with resentment or lashing out and getting even. Very easy to say, yeah? Hard to do sometimes. So, the last couple slides here are this one I think is very important for us to remember. Is when someone offends us, we shouldn't attribute greater responsibilities to them, right? The difficult conditions in which they live are burdensome enough. So lashing out at them, wishing them ill, hoping for bad things for them, or pointing out to them their problems, not being indulgent, don't do it. We already know they're coming from one of these places, right? They're unhappy, they're sick or confused, they're going through an obsessive process. Their burden is heavy enough, right? They're dealing with their own stuff, right? Don't lay any more responsibilities on them. You owe me, buddy, right? Or, I'm going to get to you, right? Don't give them anything else to worry about. Pray for them, be indulgent towards them, send them on their way with a smile, and don't let their negativity stay with you in the form of resentment, because all that does is compound the initial offense and stay with you forever, or as long as you let it. And then finally, we're reminded in this chapter that what Jesus said. Love your enemies. That doesn't mean you have to invite them for dinner. Doesn't mean that you have to go out of your way to help, to be in their life, right? But it does mean that you wish them well, that you pray for them, that when good things happen to them, you don't get mad about it, you rejoice for them. Most importantly, it means to be tolerant of your enemies. Realize they're coming from a place, a bad situation, they have their own issues. Be tolerant. Love them, wish them well, pray for them. And finally, we're told that the offended should be aware of these situations, because it's an opportunity, right? We should use love as armor and patience. When bad things happen, put on your armor, yeah? Encase yourself in love. Love for the person that's offending you, wishing them well, wishing that they overcome their issues, so that you can repel resentment from sinking in and settling inside of you. Otherwise, before you know it, a decade will pass. That person may pass or die, and you never have a chance to mend that fence. before they're gone. And you'll hang on to that until the next opportunity in another life. So thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And may you allow yourselves to receive all the blessings that God provides. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful, and I love the fact that we finished with Jesus. It's because there is no greater teacher than what he had left us. If I may add just one thing that evoking Jesus.